Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Maurizio Caschetto, editor of the Legacy of John Williams website. I'm here today once again for a new episode of the Legacy Conversation video series, and I'm here with my friend and head contributor of the Legacy of John Williams website, Tim Burden. Hello, Tim.
Hello, great to be here again.
And so we are here today for another episode of our series with a very special guest. She's a terrific classical musician, a member of the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra since 2001, where she played under Claudia Bado, Sam Redl, and Kirill Petrenko. She is an enthusiastic ambassador of her instrument, the French horn, which is the focus also of her very successful online series, Horn Hangouts. She's also a wonderful educator, always ready to share with her community a true love for music and music making. In 2021, she was appointed member of the Order of the British Empire, MBE, for services to charity and the promotion of classical music. And last but not least, she is a huge fan of John Williams. So please let me welcome here at the Legacy of John Williams podcast, horn player extraordinaire Sarah Willis. Hello, Sarah. Nice to be here with you.
Thank you. It's nice to be here with both of you. And thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm turning quite red here.
No, it's absolutely deserved, in my opinion. Because you're a terrific musician, of course, first, and but also the way you always shared love for music, as I was saying before, is something very contagious, I think, and it's so wonderful to see you as part of this series because, as many John Williams fans knows, you were part of the extraordinary concerts that John Williams did in Berlin just a couple of weeks ago. So we are here today to talk about specifically that. But before diving into our John Williams experience, your John Williams experience, I'd like to really touch briefly about your music career, because I always like to introduce musicians and let them talk about how they get into music, how they chose their instruments, and so on. So, what were your first steps into music when you were younger, and how did you decide specifically the French horn as your main instrument?
Well, goodness, it's a long story. I'll keep it very short. It's all very Googleable. So if anyone wants a long version, it's all out there. But the short version is that I wanted to become a concert pianist because I thought I was quite good and I enjoyed it and I wanted to play the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto. So when I was 14, I realized that you have to have a second instrument to get into the music colleges in London. So I was looking for a second instrument, and at school they said, well, you can have a flute or a clarinet or an oboe, and nothing against the flute or the clarinet, the oboe, but I really did not want to play them. And then I thought the harp might be quite nice, but the harp, my dad said no, because you'd have to buy a new car. And he would have to carry it probably everywhere. And they were very expensive. And the teacher at school said, we have a French horn, but that's for boys. Usually boys play the French horn. I was like, let me try. I was not really a rebel or anything. I just thought, why should there be an instrument for boys? Or, maybe I'd be good at it. I don't know. And I had such a fantastic first teacher. And I think that is the key to music education, not only music education, to any sort of education. If your first teacher instills this absolute love and passion in you, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you just want to keep doing it. And he was very encouraging, and I practiced like crazy in the first days in the youth orchestra. My very first youth orchestra made me think, this is so cool. All my scales and arpeggios, it means I can play music with other people. And I forgot completely about being a pianist. And I have played the piano concerto by Tchaikovsky since, but only on the horn. Only the horn part.
That's a great start.
It's a good beginning, though, isn't it? Yes. You can make or break that piece as a horn player.
So, and I guess that your that path that led you toward the great works of the classical music and the great repertoire also brought you closer to also, I guess, to film music in a way, because I guess in those years there was this great resurgence of orchestral film scores led mainly by John Williams. So what was your first encounter with John's music?
My very first encounter, and this, to be honest, makes me feel very old. I don't know quite how that happened because I've stayed 21 for years. But my very first encounter is quite a funny story because my dad was a journalist and we were living in Moscow when Star Wars came out. Tell me what year that was, 78?
77.
77, 78, yeah.
I wasn't even born then, so I'm not quite sure how that happened. We were very young, and I don't remember the horns at all because I didn't even know what a horn was. But I remember going to that film, and everyone thought it was too scary for us younger kids, but we weren't going to miss out on it. There was a special showing of it at the American Embassy. And I remember just being blown away by it all. I can't, in those, at that age, you don't separate the music from the pictures. It's only later you realize how important the film music is. But I saw it in Russia for the first time, but my parents had a better story. They were invited to the evening showing at the ambassador's residence. And my mother was sat next to a Russian guy who didn't speak any English. So he said to her, my mom spoke quite good Russian. She said, "Could you translate this for me a little bit so that I can understand it?" And no one knew what was coming. So my mom was like, "Yeah, sure." So the credit goes up and then the yellow writing starts going. And my mom's trying to say, "Yeah, in a galaxy far, far away, the rebel troops." And she was like, "Wah." So she did her best to translate this, all the way through like Chewbacca. And I mean, poor lady, she had a really rough time of it, but she could sort of get the story going. At the end of it, this guy stands up and introduces himself to her. It was Yuri Gagarin, the famous Russian astronaut. And he said to her, "The Americans, they make films about war in space. We Russians, we make peace in space." So that was just quite a funny story. So that was our first encounter. And then after that, I was in love with Harrison Ford all my life, like literally all my life. Of course, I still am. And when John Williams announced in the Berlin Philharmonic concert that Harrison Ford is in London and filming the 5th episode, and he was about to write the music, I was just like, Harrison, he's coming.
Well, that reminds me, you posted that fantastic horn solo photo, which I think is legendary. Earlier this year, I think for Star Wars Day, you posted that brilliant of Han Solo with the French.
That's right. Perfect. That's right. I'm glad you saw that. Yeah, horn solo was pretty good.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, Harrison was my hero, but I must say, then the film sort of kept coming, and think films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I was too young to appreciate the film music, as I said, but it was only later on when I started the horn and started, the films were still coming. What I found out about this week with John in Berlin was that how many of my younger colleagues don't know these movies. That's quite shocking. They know Harry Potter and they know, Han Solo, and they know these things, but they don't know like the old originals or Superman. My colleague sitting next to me, he'd never seen Superman. So I was giving them all homework. I was like, okay, tonight you're watching this, tonight you're watching that.
Watch list.
And it was only later on that I realized, oh my goodness, there are all these horn solos in it. And John's music, and I can really say that it's not just because I'm a horn player. John's music would be nothing without the French horns, because the French horns in his music are everything. They're the hero, they're the love interest, they're the adventure, they're the scary bits, they're the fast bits, they're the triumphant bits when they get away from the bad guys. The horns are really everything. And if anyone wants to fight me on that, I'll stick up for it. But I don't know, Tim, what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. No, I agree, because you've got the longingness as well. I love one of the favorite moments is you remember the scene in Saving Private Ryan, and the military cars coming up the drive, and the mother sees the car.
Oh yes.
Suddenly, Gus Sebring, his solo kicks in, and it's exemplifying the mother's thoughts of, oh no, I know what this news is. And there's a beautifully tender moment. That's an incredible moment. But you're right. I mean, absolutely. And of course, the Binary Sunset, that iconic solo from David Cripps, which, you have obviously had the pleasure of playing too, and so many of your colleagues. You must get a real kick whenever you play that famous.
Well, the
solo.
sad thing is we don't play much John Williams music. Now, of course, we did a movie night with the Berlin Philharmonic, the Waldbühne, which is our open air location with Simon Rattle. And we played a few of them. Of course, we played, Star Wars and Superman and Indiana Jones. And I don't know if anyone or any of your listeners have seen any of these videos. I'm sure they have. But I got the horn section in different costumes for everyone. And nobody knew we were going to do this. I got in big trouble afterwards. But we had Indiana Jones hat. I had a Princess Leia hairdo, of course. It was done very quickly. And then for the applause for the Imperial March, the camera was swooping over the orchestra and literally stopped because there were 6 horn players with Darth Vader masks on, and the camera went away quite quickly. So we had a lot of fun with that, but we don't play that sort of music very often.
Right, yes. Not so many of the cues. Okay, yes.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I think that John's music started to enter more regularly in the repertoire just in recent years. When of course he's a legend for any musician of right now. But I think that it was a long way to go to arrive for him to several historic places like the Musikverein in Vienna in January 2020 when he did the concert with the Vienna Philharmonic, and then this year the Berlin Philharmonic. So I want to ask you, did you have a sort of a hand into bringing John in Europe, or was it something that was already in planning for a long time?
I had no hand in it, but of course everybody knew that I knew him. Because I've been very lucky in that I've been able to play with him before, and I've had a real full sit-down interview with him. You know all this. You guys know everything about him. But so everybody knew that I knew him. So it was like, can you get John to do this? Can you get John to do this? Can we have his email? Can we? It was just like, guys, John's one of the most protected people on the planet, rightly so, and needs his privacy. And so, I couldn't really help anybody with that. But I feel that when he got to Berlin, I was literally one of the first people he saw, and it made him feel a little bit at home because I have played for him before. I was very lucky. I was in Tanglewood to do an interview with him for my film A World Without Beethoven, and his segment was the film music segment. Was Beethoven the precursor to film music? Would he have been a good film music composer? And we had the interview. It was wonderful. It was at the hotel that John was staying in. John came in. He said, "I've only got 10 minutes. I'm composing the new Star Wars music. I just don't know." And we'd flown with the whole team across the pond. I've only got 10 minutes. And we literally talked for an hour, and he played my horn, as you know. And
yes.
And that night, the Boston Symphony Orchestra call up, then the horns, and they say, "Look, someone can't come tomorrow. Can you jump in for movie night?" I was like, "Yes!"
Wow, so that's how that actually happened.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience with things like I sat in my motel room that night with a silent brass mute in my horn. I had been working as a presenter, so I hadn't been practicing, and everybody knows how tiring the horn parts are for John Williams concerts. And there were things on the program like the Cowboys Overture. I'd never heard it, Olympic Fanfare, okay, I'd heard it, but I'd never played it. And to do all that bells up, you have to have it memorized because you can't see the music. And so that was my first experience of playing with John. But I'd met him the day before. But I must say, when he walked out on stage, and for the Boston Symphony, Gus Sebring sitting on first horn, how legendary is that? And when he walked out and took up the baton and started Star Wars, I couldn't play. I was literally so moved. And if your throat is closed with tears, you cannot play the French horn. And the Boston Symphony horn players, who I love, they looked down the line, they were like, yep, she's off. Because they say it happens to them as well. It's to experience such a wonderful living composer who's a hero for us horn players, well, for a lot of people, but especially for the horn players. And I was sitting there, and the wonderful thing about John is he conducts his own music as if it was the first time, He's got that enthusiasm, that boyishness, that passion. I was gone. And Yoda, oh my goodness, I could hardly get those notes out. But it was an amazing concert. So that was my first experience playing with him. So I had done most of the stuff before, but most of the Berlin Philharmonic had not.
Yeah, and that was so lovely to see some of the pictures that you shot backstage with the whole section with him. There are literally a couple of pictures that are so lovely because he was, yes. You can see from his face that he was enjoying so much the experience, like he was imbuing himself in that environment. And you can see also, because I was lucky to be there in the audience to attend the concerts.
It wouldn't have been the same without you.
Oh, no, that's so flattering to hear. But really, the point is, you could see the faces of the orchestra, the players, all smiling, including yourself, of course.
I felt like afterwards, okay, I should have toned it down a bit.
And where I was sitting, I could see John's face pretty well because I was a little bit on the side. So, and he was like a boy, really smiling and exchanging looks with everyone. And I mean, I guess it doesn't happen every day to feel such kind of atmosphere.
It doesn't. I mean, I'm very lucky to play in the Berlin Philharmonic because they're an orchestra that gives 200% every night. I mean, there's no dead wood in there. There's no, everyone pulls their weight more than that's necessary often. It's just like such a fantastic atmosphere with any conductor. And we have amazing evenings so often. But I must say that the John Williams week was really something. And I've never seen the audience. I've never seen an audience like that, except at pop concerts. It was absolutely crazy. I mean, on the last night, the Saturday night with the live digital concert hall audience, in the hall, there must have been his entire fan club. They stood up. My sister was in the audience like, I've never stood up so much at a concert in my life. After every single piece.
After every piece, yes. It was funny because the president, or the former president of Res Saraband, the famous record label, Robert Townsend, actually made a statement on social media saying, pretty sure it's the first concert he's ever seen an ovation after each piece. And obviously, I mean, I'm sure you probably concur. But I'm glad you mentioned
like it.
The digital concert hall, because it was such, for us who sadly couldn't be there, it was so wonderful to feel like we were there. And the vignettes with all the players, even that whole week there was nice little teasers and interviews with everyone saying how they first heard John Williams, and the interview with the cellist, the soloist, I thought was beautiful during the intermission. But yes, 20 minutes, I think, at the very end of the concert, that was must be a record for a standing ovation.
And John was so tired. I mean, he was such a hero coming out so many times. He was really tired. I mean, in America, his concerts are done once, and usually he does half the program. At Tanglewood, he did half the program. And here he did, and also his assistant will sometimes do the rehearsals, but he did all the rehearsals, a dress rehearsal, which was open to our friends and family. He did 3 concerts. And I mean, it's really incredible. It was so sweet in the applause every night to actually stop everybody. He did this. He was like, okay, I'm going to bed now.
Yeah, his signature gesture that the concert is really over at that moment. And speaking of rehearsals, do you have any nice stories or anecdotes about how they played out? I mean, there were some photos again on social media, and you can see you players talking with him, or not just posing for pictures, but also trying to exchange a few words with him. So how it...
Well, it was really like a pop star coming in for most people. One colleague came up to me and said, what is all this? Why are there bodyguards backstage? I was like, this is John Williams. Yeah, but is that so? I mean, he really was not, it was not clear that to him how huge he is. The guy never goes to the movies. So, okay. But for most people, it was a real pop star. But the first rehearsal, people were a little bit, reserved. But John is so warm and so welcoming. And people did have questions about the music. So they were going up and asking him things. And John is so open. When he's backstage, he's in his room. And that I find that absolutely okay. He's tired. He needs a little rest. And for the photo with the horns backstage, I made sure I got official permission because he wasn't actually doing photos backstage. But he loves the horns, so he did. But up on the podium, people were posing with him and talking to him. It was wonderful. He had a little story to tell about everyone. I love the story he told. You've probably heard it about Luke and Leia, and Luke and the Leia theme in Star Wars. The fact that if he'd known they were going to be brother and sister later on, he might have written the love theme differently. We didn't know all that. It's fantastic. And my orchestra is really not used to playing film music, and most people hadn't played any of it before. There's a lot of stuff in there. It's technically huge. And I'd made a joke with him on the very first day, before the first rehearsal. I was in the hall deciding where we were going to sit. And all of a sudden I felt that, and I turned around and John was there. He was like just watching from the side of the stage. So we had a chat, and I said, John, it's really tiring, all this stuff for us. And we're playing it with 6 horns. It's only written for 4, and some horn sections do it with 8. but we're doing it with 6. And he said, yeah, well, I'll check in with you and see how your lips are doing. And he really did the whole week. And then at some point he said backstage, he said, I'll cover all your dental bills.
That's lovely.
All sorts. I mean, he was just, and then he'd look up, and in the concert as well, he looked at me and he went, as if to say, how are they doing? Oh, it was just a great week.
Yeah, I do remember the small moment that when we met outside the concert hall, and you said to me that, you know, this stuff isn't meant to play one piece after the other. My lips hurt now.
Yeah, John said that. He said this music was not written. He apologized. He said this music is not written to. I mean, in the first half we had 6 finales of 6 movies, or was it 6 or 5? I can't remember. But every end of a piece was a huge finale. And the most tiring thing in film music are the credits, the credit music parts, because there you have all the themes mixed together and it always finishes with a bam, 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 bam. So that's when it gets tiring. And we'd finished everything. We'd done the Olympic fanfare, and then we did Far and Away and Close Encounters and
Harry Potter. Yes.
I mean, ooh. And it wasn't composed to be played one after the other. So it was incredible. But we all knew he was coming, and we all knew we were going to play it. And I was so proud of our brass section, because you know, Bruckner and Mahler, they're so easy compared to that.
No, I have to say, really, you know, I had the luck to experience a few John Williams concerts in my life with John Williams music, but I have to say this is the very first time where I really felt in my body the power of the brass section. You know, I've been to several concerts in my life, symphony concert, orchestra concerts, but this was the very first time I felt it in my body. I mean, it was so power, so there. I don't know, probably also the acoustics of the hall, which is an incredible hall, helps you in that. But really, it was really a physical experience also, not just something intellectual or emotional. It's also physical. And I realized how much music is tied to our soul and how it vibrates inside, and really feels us connected to something very powerful. And I think John's music is, in this regard, is very special, because you were talking about his horn solos. I was talking with your colleague Stefan Jezierski after again hanging out after the concerts outside the hall.
Horn players like to hang out.
Yeah, and he was saying a thing that really carried with me, and he said John writes really the perfect music for the horn players. Everything is written in the perfect register. He said something like he's the meat and potato. It's the meat and potato of the horn player. It's just perfect.
I agree with that if you're a high horn player, which Stefan is, and I'm officially a low horn player. It doesn't mean I can't play the high notes and that I don't have to, because I do. You know, you guys know, second horns are often up in the gods with the first horns. And in Bruckner, I would liken John's horn parts to Bruckner horn parts, because in Bruckner, the first and second horns are the 2 high horns, and third and fourth are the lower ones. And John's music is often like that. But remember, in the studios, whoever books the horns usually books principal players from around the area, like in LA, and look at who was on the LSO sessions and everything, you know. Most of them are principal horn players, not low horn players. So John writes a lot of fantastic music, perfectly pitched, but quite high. And that is a big challenge for us low horn players. I really went into bodybuilding mode with my lips the weeks before, because it's higher than my comfort zone. And but you don't want to leave it out. You know, you don't want to go bum bum ba bum 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 bum. You don't want to go bum bum ba bum 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 bum. You know, you want to play those high notes with everybody, but it takes a lot of courage as a low horn player. Tim, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely, no, 100%. And you know, you want to protect your embouchure. And you know, we're talking there about seeing and experiencing symphony concerts all across the world. It's amazing now. You know, this may sound a bit geeky, but we'll go with it. You know, having the bells up from the horn sections is a really big deal. I mean, it adds to the drama. It looks terrific as well. Obviously, you know, I'm thinking about those wonderful Mahler concerts as well, you know, that Humphrey Burton directed. But it was so great to see the horns up, bells up. And, you know, there was, I think, a post a few days before the concert. So you did it, I think, during the first rehearsal, didn't you, or something, as a surprise? Is that
Yeah,
what
that's
you did?
right, because it's not written in the end of ET. It's not written in dum bum ba da ba da ba da ba ba. It's not written in the part. It is written in Olympic fanfare. This is like really geeky, so I hope your listener Maurizio will forgive us.
You're in good company.
But,
Yes.
but the John Williams fans should know about this. This is really important. So for anyone wondering what I'm talking about, this is bells up. So we play like this and bells up literally like that. So you have the horn this way, but if you have the horn here, you can't see the music, or you can look underneath it, or if you're a bit taller, I can't see the music when I'm doing bells up. So it's in Olympic fanfare, but it's not at the end of ET. I called Andrew Bain and I said, where do you put the bells down again in Olympic fanfare? And that's fine. And I said, do you think it would be okay if we do bells up in ET? He said, you have to do bells up in ET. So I don't know how used to that John was, but it's not in the part, but we did it anyway. And he loved it. Every time we did it, he gave me a special smile. I felt very, very blessed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It really is only you and the LSO that have done
really?
that. Yeah, I mean, all the American guys, Vienna didn't, although it might be tricky with their horns, I suppose.
Yeah, they probably fall apart.
There's an image. But it's just obviously visually tremendous. But one of the things we'd obviously love to hear is whether, because the Berlin Phil have their own label and have their own, Philharmonic shop and some wonderful recordings and releases. Is there by any chance going to be an album on your label? Are you allowed to stay, or is it under wraps? Or
watch this space?
Oh, okay. That's a good
Very
tease.
good to know. Very good to know.
We have the digital concert hall recording. It came out yesterday, so everyone can watch that, and it's totally worth it. You can buy a 7-day pass to the digital concert hall, or a month pass, or whatever, and you can watch it as many times as you like. And I think, it's a really great concert to watch, and the sound. My favorite thing about the digital concert hall is the sound. It's incredible.
Yes,
it really is.
They're remote cameras, so they're not as active as a normal TV concert would be. So you're preset, so you can zoom in and out a little bit, but you can't move around a lot. So, but they do a fantastic job. But the sound is incredible. Christoph Franke, the head of audio, was on that week and did an amazing job. And a patch session was actually planned, but we didn't do that in the end because John had to leave. So we all knew that, there's this one bit in the Olympic fanfare. Now here we're getting really nerdy, but Maurizio, that's allowed, isn't it?
Yes, totally, absolutely.
Well, there's this. I'll tell you another little insider. There's this one bit in the for the horns in the Olympic fanfare that goes bum ba 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 da 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 da, and that's high B flats. And to get 4 horns on a high B flat all the same, it's really not easy. And the first 2 evenings, we weren't quite perfect, so we had one night, the digital concert hall night, to get it right. And it was really quite stressful, because and we did, so we're very proud.
And you see on the book, it's coming. So you have to be prepared.
So the potential for humiliation is enormous on the night of the digital concert hall live stream, but it's all recorded. And to answer your question, I'm not actually quite sure what I can say except watch this space, and I hope you won't be too disappointed.
Not at all. No, that's a wonderful tease. Absolutely. It's just, like for instance, the recent Mahler box that I just adore. It's so beautifully bound.
It's beautifully made.
Attention to detail. I mean, a lot of labels wouldn't have that kind of input into the presentation. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just kind of put out. So fingers crossed. But when you talk about the sound of the concert hall and the dynamics and the balance of the orchestra, I thought it was perfect. Certainly on the recording, I heard, and the timpani. I love the timpanist was really going for it as well. Like he
had a great time
in his element.
He had such a great time.
Yeah, you could see also one of the percussion players, the one who plays the piatti. He was waiting for the moment at the end of the Olympic fanfare where there's a big, that thing that John does in many of his pieces, the Gran Cassa playing a quaver before the piatti comes in. So, and he was waiting for that moment with a huge smile.
Yeah, that's a moment you do not want to mess up.
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
And speaking of that, you could see that for many members of the orchestra, playing with John was a real dream come true, and for yourself too. But do you think his music will become more and more part of the standard repertoire of symphony orchestras, not just in movie nights or special film concerts, but also John did a lot of still does a lot of concertized version of his movie music. So do you think his music will be more and more part of standard repertoire together alongside the great pieces from Mahler, Prokofiev, Strauss, and so on?
Well, I don't see why not. There is a problem always. It's quite expensive music to perform. Because it's always protected by a Star Wars franchise or this and that. So I'm not an expert. I don't know about finding, that our library knows about that better than I do. So I know it's not easy for music hire. And that might put people off. It also needs a huge orchestra. It needs a really, really good brass players and really good, it's quite an event. It's quite a huge force. And I don't know how protected these pieces are. If you just decide you want to play Raiders March, if that's no problem, you just hire the music. I think you have to go through all sorts of channels to get that, but like the Bernstein Foundation. I'm not sure. Yeah. That might be something that would make life easier if that was made an easier path. Maybe it isn't an easy path. I don't know. Maybe you guys know more about this than I do.
No, I think that's certainly a problem, and one of the problem of proposing film music in concert hall is the fact that it's difficult to build a standard repertoire of just film music of great pieces. Of course, John's pieces many of them are available to buy from his publisher, but it's difficult for other composers or other great pieces that would deserve also to be presented and played by great orchestras.
What do you program with I think something like the Cowboys, how do you program a John Williams piece? Mm-hmm. It's quite hard to combine them because yes. Do you put a Bruckner Symphony in the second half and the Cowboys Overture in the first half, or it's an evening of John's music or an evening of film music, fantastic. But John's pieces, they're so well done, they're so well orchestrated. Mm-hmm. And like my colleague Stefan said, he understands the instruments. He really knows what sounds good. He knows what's possible. He pushes everyone to their limits. But how would you program that? It's not so easy. And his solo concertos have never sort of made it into that mainstream concert repertoire. Not yet, anyway. The piece, Bruno's piece, the elegy was just amazing, but it's short.
Yes. Yeah, no, I was thinking also because, I'm old enough to remember the days where it was really impossible to think that an orchestra like the Berlin Phil or the Vienna Phil would play film music, and specifically John's music, and there seems to be really a sea change in this regard. And I don't think, as I wrote in my little review of the concert on the website.
Thank you for that. It was beautiful.
Oh, thank you, really. But really, what I really wanted to point out is not just because John is now an old venerable master that is being respected by everyone. That's now is right to perform his music. There's something else going on, I think. It is the fact that probably people playing in orchestras grew up listening to this music and they don't have any preconception or even prejudice considering this great music. That's it. It doesn't matter if it's written for film or...
I've never experienced prejudice like, oh, we can't play that, it's only film music. It's just a general fact that John is a genius, and there are other fantastic film composers as well, but there's no one, in my book, there's no one to compare to John. As a musician, I say that, not just as someone who likes to be entertained. It's not just that he writes nice tunes. It's everything about it. It's the orchestration. It's the thought. It's the building up, building down. Of course, a lot of it's predictable. It sounds like a negative word, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. But you start off with a bang, and then you go into a love theme, and then you build it up again and finish on a high note. That's showbiz. That's what you get.
Yeah, totally. He also worked as an arranger for musicals like Fiddler on the Roof, for example, where he did some fantastic orchestration for the film version of the musical. So he's in tune also with that world. You know, he knows very well. He worked in the past with the great MGM orchestrators in the 50s and the 60s.
He knows. He just knows. He knows what to do. But that's how he started. He came from the keyboard. And all the best composers come from the keyboard, you know. They can all play their own stuff. And you can just, his mastery of the orchestra is really astounding. And I don't feel any, like there's any prejudice. I just feel it's hard to program. In the sort of typical, maybe we have to rethink the way we program classical music concerts, you know. And also, what do you program after a John Williams piece? Because he brings the house down. You get people to sit back and listen to a Mozart symphony. I mean, I would love that, but that's
it definitely poses challenges. Yes.
We're talking about the Blue Book, like the Hal Leonard signature edition, or the Blue Book Club apparently is what it's called in the music world. But the horn edition, which was lovingly kind of dedicated to Vince DeRosa, I'd just be interested to hear, Sarah, you know, was there, or maybe still is, you know, a horn solo from, you know, the past Hollywood classic scores, or maybe London-based scores, which really resonates with you? Is there a specific horn solo you often go back to? Or
you mean a John Williams one, or you mean other composers? Because I was just suddenly thinking, is he asking me for different other composers and horn solos? And, you know, if I had to think, if a non-John Williams horn solo is hard to think of. I mean, Titanic, maybe James Horner and stuff like that, or Robin Hood, but they're all John. Otherwise, they're all John. I mean, there's just too many of them. And unfortunately, Maurizio, you know, Leah's theme was planned, and we played it in the first concert.
Yes.
But John was too tired. It went on too long. And of course, our first horn was a guest, Chris Parks, and he was devastated. We were all devastated that it was cut. And Chris and John actually asked Chris to go to his room, where he apologized in person and said, please, you play it so beautifully. It had nothing to do with how you play it. He said, I'm just tired. The concert's so long. So it was either cutting a piece or cutting what he talked about. And of course, nobody wanted him to not talk.
Yeah.
So
he talked a lot during those
concerts. Wasn't it great?
Yes. Yeah, it was really good. Much more than Vienna. Much more.
Yeah.
John loved Berlin. He loved being here. He'd spent a few days here. He told me, like he said in the concert, you know, all these children out on the street, and it just had such a beautiful feeling and so much history, and the sun was shining those days he was here, and he really loved it. And the Berlin audience is very special. They're very international. And the orchestra is very international. It's called the Berlin Philharmonic, but it's almost half foreigners. And it's just, it's very open. And I'm not saying Vienna's not, of course they are, but they're much more traditional in a way. Berlin is very, very open. I think John sensed that, and also in English. And I think he sensed everyone really understood what he was saying in Berlin. And he just loved it. You could tell. It was great. Yeah. You asked me for a solo. You know, what can I say? Of course, Luke and Leah, Leah's theme. That is the horn solo. And do you remember when I did the horn hangout with the principal horns?
Yes, last May.
Of course,
Brilliant.
And that was such an amazing event to listen to each one of them, each principal horn from each Star Wars movie. We did it on the 4th, of course, when else? And to listen to every single one of them had played it, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And when you listen to the films, you listen to the scores, you can hear it, you know, if you're a home player, you can hear, that's Dave Cripps. That's Dylan Skyhart, you know, that's Andrew Bain. You can really hear who is doing what. And so that, of course, is the classic one. But you've got, you know, the Star Wars theme comes on the horns first, and you get to Yoda, and Yoda has this wonderful, you know, finally John goes in the low range a little bit. You've got that. And you've got, you know, what was the one you just said at the beginning? Forgotten already. That Private Ryan.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
there's too many, you know.
I know, that's true. Yeah, it's just, I guess sometimes, you know, whenever we all compile playlists, whether it be for the car or for a walk. There's often a piece you kind of go back to regularly, just to either hear the beauty of the sound, beauty of the playing, or of course, essentially the actual music. Well, I would actually go for, you know, I would probably go for, it would have to be Sleepers. Now, this was one of Jim Thatcher's solos.
I have to listen to that again.
Sleepers.
You guys are you're bigger nerds than me.
Well,
I love it all, but I'm pretty mainstream. You guys know every bar of it all. But I'm going back to listen to that because I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah, I think you'll recognize it when you hear it. It's just the tone of that.
It's wonderful.
There's also Superman, David Cripps, Superman the movie, the death of Jonathan Kent. That's the restraint and emotional kind of tone of that is beautiful, because it could have easily been kind of overplayed, but he really manages to get the tragedy of that. So it's so poignant, but of course, and then, as you say, mentioned earlier, Saving Private Ryan, I think Gus Sebring's solo during that score is just stunning, so stunning. He has a lovely kind of range.
Yeah, they did that live, I think, in the movie night I was there, and I was like on the end just going,
right, the hymn.
An amazing playing.
Yes.
And speaking of great musicians, I mean, me and Tim spoke with many, luckily, of John Williams players in Los Angeles that recorded in many of his scores, including Jim Thatcher and also other great first chair players that played in dozens of John scores. Malcolm McNabb, the great trumpet player, Luis Di Tullio, the great flutist. So what's the perspective of a classical musician like you when you hear these amazing studio musicians pulling out such virtuosity and such incredible dexterity in having music play right off the bat? Because we know studio musicians are like the Navy SEALs of the music. They came in, boom, they opened the book and they play.
It's so impressive. It's so impressive. We couldn't do that. We're not sight readers. We need our 2-3 rehearsals to get everything sorted. But then they're really good. Studio musicians are so impressive. They come and they just play the stuff. And I remember the story of the LSO playing Star Wars for the first time. They had no idea they were booked to go to the studio. They'd heard it was some science fiction stuff. I think it was Clive Gillinson who told me this story. He was a cellist in the LSO, and now he's the head of Carnegie Hall. And he said they had no idea, and nobody had gotten the music. And the day before, Maurice Murphy, it was his first day in the orchestra on trial as principal trumpet. The day before, Maurice Murphy went to get the music. Principal trumpet opened it up, was like, I won't repeat the words because they're not very internet friendly, but he was like, ooh, in his northern way. Yeah. So I think that was quite a shock to a lot of people how hard that actually was. So, I mean, complete chapeau to the studio musicians who play John's stuff.
Yeah, and some of them are now, the stuff of legend, like Vince DeRosa that we mentioned before. I mean, what can you say? I mean, it's like having and being so exposed also. If you think about how many people watch those movies.
A funny thing was with John in Berlin was that he has this studio timing in him. He's like, okay, we do this, right, and now this, and we do this, and my orchestra's like, okay, let's find our music. Let's look for this. Let's chat to our neighbor and let's do this. And John was like, dang, okay, figure F now, and everyone's still looking for figure F. And that was really funny to watch. It was like he was on studio time.
It's in his blood.
Yeah, the red light going on, you have to be
we
right
commented on that a lot that week. People were like, why is he in such a rush? And I said, because he's used to the studio. And they were like, oh yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. Sarah, before wrapping up, I want to ask you about, you are such a great musical citizen of the world, I would say, because all the stuff that you do with your Horn Hangout series, which is absolutely brilliant, but also all the education and your really love for bringing people together. So how important is for you to connect with people online and gather a community around what you do, around also even your instrument? I mean, how much important is that for you, for your life as a musician?
It's vital. And these days, in the times of the internet, and with kids having phones and tablets ingrained into their hands, that's probably the next thing. They'll have chips in here. It's absolutely vital, and it's necessary for what we do, because in the old days, you'd go to concerts because your parents made you. or your parents were playing classical music at home when you found a nice piece, so you're interested in that. These days, it doesn't happen that way around. It happens the way around that people get interested in a character or a person, or what is she? Oh, she's quite cool. What does she do? Horn. What's a horn? What orchestra? Oh, I'll just listen to some of their music. That's the way around things seems to. I don't know, Tim. What do you think? Is that too general? Is that an unfair way of thinking? I mean, that's why this interaction is so important, because people do get interested in music that way.
That's right, and you're sharing both the enthusiasm, the love, and also essentially the education, which is absolutely, what was that term you used, Maurizio? The musical ambassador.
Yes.
Yeah, no, which is absolutely a wonderful phrase. It's so appropriate. Some of the activity you did over summer, the Mozart Mambos, was it? I think.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just terrific, because
So
again,
lovely.
it's multinational, and it's great as well to cross that kind of, sometimes that barrier, which is often in music.
Thank you. That's also a big point. And the point is that we are so privileged. We live in countries where we have access to good teachers, good concerts, good equipment, online music, everything. We have it. We have that access. Even if you don't have so much money, you can still, watch YouTube and learn things. And I'm dealing with countries like Cuba and Latin America, and places that really, they do not have this luxury that we have, but they love music with such a passion. And I think it's almost our duty to share what we have. And that's why I put on horn master classes online and do this and that, because it's not for, the people at the high school around the corner, because they can come and see me, but it's more like, and it's also letting people have a look into our life. When I started the Horn Hangout over 10 years ago now, nobody did that. Nobody interviewed people about how it was to play in orchestras. And it was now everybody interviews everybody about everything. So it's almost too much.
Including myself.
We know too much. But I felt like I let people in, they want to see backstage. They want to see behind the scenes. They want to know about a Berlin Philharmonic horn player. They want to find out that I get nervous too. It makes them maybe feel a little bit better, or gives them inspiration that if I made it, maybe they can too. I'm not, we're not these penguins in fancy dress who come on stage and just bow and go off stage. I don't want to be that sort of person. And when I started doing it, there was quite a lot of pushback from colleagues that just thought it was self-promotion. I've never, ever seen it like that. And I think it's absolutely vital to our branch of music that we love so much.
It totally feels very, very spontaneous in my eyes. I mean, at least because it's you can bring really joy into people having fun, and playing music. And that project Mozart and Mambo that you did, it was so wonderful because of that. Because you can see the joy, music, classical music can be something so joyful and enthusiastic that it's not like stuff for old guys going into, with white hair, going to a concert hall. It can be something very genuine, very, I was talking before about feeling music physically, and I think this is something essential to bring younger people into concert hall, to feel that it's something like that you can also feel within yourself. It's not just like that stuff that you have to think about and feel clever to understand it. No, it's there for everyone, and music is a giant stream where everyone can dive in and just enjoy being moved by it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll drink to that, won't we, Tim?
Yeah, 100%. And there's the digital concert hall. That's a great segment with you, Sarah. The family Christmas concert, which I suppose is coming up. Coming up soon. So it's quite timely. That's something we could recommend along with the John Williams concert. It's no tremendous.
And also, I think that John's music could be also a key ingredient for future generations, because it's not just because it's music from successful film that many people love. It's because it's music that makes you feel happy, makes you feel joyful, it makes you feel a huge range of emotions. And another thing that I think is now, maybe it's less important now that it's music, like you were saying before. A lot of people maybe never saw Superman or the older Star Wars movies or Close Encounters, but they still enjoy the music. You know, I was there at the concerts with my wife, who's now starting to become more acquainted with John Williams' music. And she's starting really to love it.
I imagine being married to you, there's no choice. As somebody very famous said, there were 3 of us in this relationship.
But I'll ask her if she feels that way, actually. No, but the fact is that she hasn't seen many of those movies. She never saw Star Wars, for example, but she now loves the music. I mean, it's fun. I mean, after the concert was ended, I asked her, what was your favorite moment? And she said, Far and Away. And, you know, because it's just great music. It's not like because it's a movie that everyone saw. It's, you know, it's a fine movie, absolutely, but it's not something that it's just the music that makes you feel so joyful.
If I may have the final word, ladies first. Well, you can have your final words, but my final words would be the word that sums up the best how I felt last week playing John's music. The word, it has to be joy. I was full of joy the whole week. Of course, my teeth hurt, my lips hurt, my back hurt. I was exhausted at the end of the week. My arms hurt from the bells up, but I was full of joy. I played slurs, I played high notes, I swooped up and down the horn, and all the technical difficulties were somehow not forgotten because you're always aware of that, but I was full of such joy, and I'm so grateful to John for writing such incredible music. It will be with us for generations and generations after. And just gratefulness and joy, really.
Well said. We would love to, before you go, Sarah, if you don't mind, we'd love to see a close-up of that photo of you with John Williams. Is that okay?
I was hoping you'd say that.
Just in the background there. Let's see. That's lovely.
You see that?
Yeah, very cool.
Yes.
Lovely, really is. Fantastic.
It was from the interview in Tanglewood at his hotel.
Yes.
And he just played my French horn. He had no choice in the matter, as you saw in the interview. It was like, John. But then he was quite interested, and he took the mouthpiece and said, I hope the world is watching. And of course they were.
Yes, they were.
Yeah, that was a lovely moment.
Pretty sure that was the first time he's done that on TV, I'm pretty sure. So that's quite an accolade, Sarah.
Sarah, it's been such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for being our guest on the Legacy of John Williams podcast. And really, let's keep in touch. And really, we will definitely follow more of your career, your absolutely great initiatives in music. So I very much hope that this will be the first of maybe other future chats coming in the future.
Thanks to both of you. Hope to see you very soon. In person would be fun.
Yes, definitely would be fun. Yes. Thanks so much for your time to chat to us.
Thank you, Sarah.
See you guys somewhere in the world soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.